Let's talk about the signs of envy, particularly in those who are most likely to feel it: friends, family, and peers. Envy is trickier to detect than most emotions because it's not direct. There are only indirect signs that a person feels envious towards you, both in the moment of their envy and as a broader trend in the relationship. But your ability to decode the signs of envy might save you years of suffering, futile attempts to repair broken relationships, and the mental suffering brought by turning over confusing situations in your head. This is a Deep Psychology podcast. I'm Ross. We blend spirituality, psychology, and self help to help you shine a light on your inner workings. The insights I share have helped me deeply understand myself and transform my life. Listen to this podcast if you want to get real, powerful insights and avoid all the fluffy nonsense that abounds in self help circles. You'll know more about your psychology than 99% of people out there. You can find me on all the major podcasting platforms or head to deep-psychology.com, which is visited by thousands every month, for tons of free resources. So let's start by getting a handle on envy and where it comes from before we start talking about the signs of it. Basically, what I want you to realize is that we all experience envy, although we don't really admit it to ourselves or to other people. It's just a core fact of being human, of having an individual identity, of living in a society where we have private property and so on, and where we have different skill levels, where we have different salaries and so on. It's inevitable that we're going to get jealous of other people. And I think when you want to understand envy, turn inside first and look at yourself and look at how you envy people. I can guarantee you that there are people that you envy and that you act on this envy in a concealed way, but you do act on it and it affects your relationships with them. I'm not saying that you don't have to feel envy because you're probably going to feel it whether you want to or not. There are ways of channeling it and making the envy into something else, but we're not going to talk about that right now. Just know that you probably envious several people, whether it's in terms of status or respect or the attention they receive or money or the job they have or their skills and achievements. Just when you come across someone who has something that you don't in some way, whatever that thing is, just for a second you feel inferior, you feel sort of frustrated, and you actually kind of hate them a little bit. That is what envy feels like. Um, what's going to happen is if you experience this envy over and over again, it's going to become sort of a pattern in the relationship with them. You're going to start to dislike the person as like a general trend, not just as a momentary feeling, but actually as a thing that infects all the interactions you have with that person. Basically, what we do is once we get to this point of actually envying someone permanently and sort of disliking them for what they have and we don't, we have to create this narrative that conceals our envy because, as I said, we don't admit envy and we don't like feeling it. It's unpleasant to feel. So what we do is we cover it up and we pretend it to be something else. And instead of admitting that it's our own hatred of the other person, we have to make them into a monster. We have to justify it by making them into a monster. So we call them lucky or ruthless, or we say that they know the right people. They don't really deserve what they have. In fact, they might have done immoral stuff to get it. At least we think in our mind. And this gives us sort of a justification to try and bring them down a notch to to someone that we're more comfortable with, that doesn't stir up envy for us. And if you go through this process enough times, this process of, first of all, envying them over and over again, momentarily, then it becoming a trend, and then you justifying your dislike and hatred of them and your envy of them with by making them into a kind of monster. What you're going to do is you're going to basically start attacking them And what's going to happen is they're not going to suspect that you're envious of them. You'll have largely forgotten that you're envious by this point. All you'll see is this monster that you hate and that you want to attack. And it seems like you have reasons for attacking. Curious thing about envy is it most commonly occurs amongst friends, colleagues, and peers because these are the people we know most about. Um, we know what they achieve, we know what they're good at, and we know what they have. And unfortunately, these are the people that we're supposed to try and, at least if we don't like them, like their personality, we have to try and get along with them. And they're people that we even maybe generally get along with, but there's envy there because we see them too close. And this is one of the sad things about envy. And if you yourself are a victim of envy, and this is really what we're going to focus on today, is how to know if you're a victim of it. But you can apply the opposite and realize that when you're feeling envy towards someone and how they'll experience it. If we are a victim of envy, we're not going to experience the envy. As I said, if envy hides itself, it doesn't express itself as envy. The other person would have to tell you, I'm envious of you. They're not going to do that. We just experience like hostility or nasty actions or put downs, and usually it's quite confusing. It seems like maybe we've not done anything wrong, or at least not anything to justify what the other person does to us. So it can be very confusing and isolating. So this is why you've got to know about the signs of envy, so you can realize that the other person is motivated by envy that they themselves are generating. It's not something that you are doing to cause this trouble in the relationship. And we have to learn to decode the envy. So that's why we're going to talk about the signs. Let's talk about the signs now. First top sign of envy is displeasure with your success. So let's say you share your success with someone, a recent success, and you get sort of like a muted response in some way. It's not really the response you'd expect from someone who wants you to do well. It might be sadness or disappointment or anger, or all of a sudden they just go quiet for a few seconds and they don't know how to react. This is likely envy. They might even smile and praise you, but it seems sort of forced and unconvincing. What's going on here is that they actually resent your success, but at the same time, they like you overall. They like you as a person, and they might want to maintain their image as a good friend or family member or colleague. So you get this muted response or whatever else it is, and then they come out and they try and praise you in some way or smile. But it's hard for them because actually they don't want you to have more success because it makes them feel inferior. Now, as I said, it can be very confusing. It's a kind of obvious sign, and I'm sure you've experienced it, but it can leave you very confused. You think, well, they're supposed to be my friend or my sister or my uncle or auntie, and they don't seem happy for me. Why would they be so half-hearted? Don't they care about me? Don't they want me to do well? And, well, you just got to realize that they might be motivated by envy. The other thing is about this is that the negative response that you get can seem sort of disproportionate to the size of your success. Let me explain. From the outside, success looks like this big orgasmic moment, like a fireworks display or a flash of magic. On the inside, it feels very different. It feels like a long process that you go through, and the success that you get is like the very end of that process. Um, and people tend to ignore that long, difficult process because it's kind of just hard for us to imagine it when we see the external signs of success. So what's going to happen is it's sort of like they inflame your success and they overinflate it compared to how you view it. And so this might even make their negative reaction worse and just even more confusing and even more, you don't understand why they're feeling that way. Also say you might get the look of envy. If you share your success with someone, you might get the look of envy. Now, I'm not going to try and imitate what this face is. You've probably seen it. And actually, in my accompanying article, you can see a photo of, it's like a cartoon of a lady with the face of envy. Basically, the eyes sort of bore through you. The mouth is turned up, so so this part of the mouth is turned down, and it's like an inverted U shape. The nose is turned up, and the chin is jutting out. Now, if you notice this for a moment on someone's face, especially when you share your recent success with them, it's a big sign of envy. Okay, hostility. As we've made clear by now, envy often manifests as hostility because actually they kind of dislike you in some way and they justify their dislike by making you into a monster. And this is how the envier releases this hostility and tension within them. They release it by being hostile to you. Hurting you is also sort of satisfying because um, it helps them bring you down a peg or try to bring you down a peg. Um, this can be very confusing as well because, as I said, they're not going to advertise this to you. So, whenever someone seems to lose control or say ugly things you don't deserve, especially if it's related to success, um, be aware. Could be a sign of envy. How does this hostility come out? It can come out in bad ways, or it can come out in small ways or big ways. So they might compare you to others who are better than you. They might not offer you any praise for your success. They might just point out your failures or they might point out the downside of your success. They'll highlight your weaknesses and mistakes to try and make you feel worse about yourself. And when it starts getting a bit vicious, they'll go after your biggest insecurities or difficulties. And actually, behind the scenes, they'll be hostile to you. They'll start sabotaging you in some way behind the scenes. So, all of this stuff is quite normal. Some of it is quite innocent, but little things like comparing you to people that are better than you, um, over time can wear you down. And these little things can be the sign of a more vicious kind of envy brewing inside them. Number three is Schadenfreude. So in German, Schaden means to hurt or to damage. I don't speak German. I had to look this up. So Schaden means to hurt or damage, and Freude means joy or pleasure. So what you'll notice is if someone envies you, they take satisfaction in your failures and struggles. It's it's kind of amazing if you share some of your bad news with an envier, you'll actually notice that it gives them pleasure. Like you can notice that their speech and tone changes, and you might even notice facial expressions changing, um, because they don't want to see you do well, and uh, not feeling so inferior to you is a great source of relief to them. So it's very natural. What you might notice is that enviers are often quick to give you advice and be a shoulder to cry on when things aren't going so well for you, um, and then they disappear. Except when they're being this shoulder to cry on, it's not like they're walking in your shoes. It's not like they're putting your arm round you. It's more like they're inviting you to share your pain because it actually makes them feel better about themselves. And you can notice this. It's kind of like it's a very forced sort of empathy that they show. Hard to describe, something you have to look out for. And actually, if their envy is really strong, what they'll do is they'll take advantage of moments where you're struggling or you're having a difficulty in your life to just plunge a knife into the wound and make you suffer even more. And they might even disguise all this as subtly disguise it as advice or honesty, or tough love or something like this. Actually, what it's motivated by is envy and a desire to harm you. Okay, and the final top sign of envy is that they only talk about their successes. So What I've noticed with people that I suspect who envy me, they usually go out of their way to advertise their success and not their failure or difficulty. And they make their life out to be this like a big unending stream of happiness and success. Now, obviously, we all do this whether we're envious of people or not. But with enviers, it can be a factor. What happens at this point is it seems that the relationship has become more about one-upsmanship rather than bonding and reciprocity. Because basically, in their eyes, they see it as it's like a battle between the two of you, um, as to who can be most successful. And because you seem to be far ahead of them, they'll share all their successes. Even if you're not going out of your way to do so, they will do it. And what happens when they share this, you can react with admiration or even envy because you believe that they're successful and perfect. And this is what they want. But their behavior actually stems from inferiority and insecurity. So you have to try and see through that. You have to see through their how much they inflate their success. They're doing this because they want you to feel envious of them. They worry that you perceive them as a failure, so they go overboard in hiding their feelings and accentuating their triumphs. Um, Another warning here is that you may unknowingly do the same. So by talking about your success too much, we're going to talk about this in the next video, which is going to talk about how to diffuse envy or how to deal with envy. By talking about your success too much, you actually stir up envy in others. So that's you have to be careful here. These signs are also in yourself, and so if you talk about only talk about your success, one, it might be a sign that you're envious of others, but it also might be a good a good reason why other people are envying you so much. Now, if these signs become a pattern in the relationship, be aware that it could turn nasty soon. These signs are fairly harmless in a sense because you're not going to get long term damage from them, and envy can be expressed in worse ways. But just be aware that it could turn nasty. Don't trigger their inferiority. Never bring into question their success and happiness. Just go along for the ride. Try and put the attention on them. Try and um, inflate their self image. And in this case, when I notice people are envious of me, I prefer to pretend rather than speak my mind and share my life. Honestly, I prefer to pretend. And that's what we're going to talk about in the next video, how to deal with envy. So now you know the telltale signs of envy. Time to check out the next episode when we'll look at how to deal with envious people. If you like this video, do subscribe so that you stay up to date. I've got new episodes coming twice a week until the end of the year. Thanks a lot for watching, and I'll see you soon.